evening to everyone present here. Thanks for this wonderful opportunity to share my views on pediatric drug development using PBPK models. So this is an overview of my slides. I would like to give an introduction. What are the challenges that are there in pediatric drug development and the pharmacokinetics of pediatric age groups, and what are the different tools that can be used for developing this model, and what is its current application and the regulatory status of the same. So as everybody knows, pediatric age group includes children across the different age groups like newborns, infants, toddlers, preschools, up to adolescent teen. And children under 5, or especially in countries like India, are vulnerable to many of the infectious diseases like malaria, pneumonia, diarrhea, HIV, etc. And even the older children, non-communicable diseases are of high threat. Despite there are many medicines available in the market, and there can be assured prevention as well as treatment, some of the common infectious diseases are still killing our young children in large numbers because of the lack of pharmaceutical cure and the availability of exact medicines for the pediatric use. So are we not having the medicines at all? No, not like that. So over the years, the dosing strategies in pediatric age group has been done based on the allometric scaling, that is, they're based on their weight, based on their body surface area and height of adults to the pediatrics. So that we relate from the adults to the pediatrics, that is called as top-down method. Physiologically based pharmacokinetic modeling, like PBPK modeling, offers a unique modality to incorporate multiple levels of information to estimate the exact age-specific pharmacokinetics and design pediatric-specific dosage forms also. Not only the dose, it also supports in designing a new dosage forms also. So quickly we will see why is this required and what is its current importance of developing the model for pediatric dosage forms. These are some of the challenges which are there for developing a drug for pediatrics. Pediatric age groups come under a category called the therapeutic orphans because the clinical trials cannot be easily executed as that of adults because of certain ethical and safety issues. And they also come under a category called orphan drugs in the pediatric age group because the safety and tolerability is really unknown for most of the drugs. And there are certain criteria which has to be considered to optimize a pediatric formulation. Like we have to provide an individualized dosing and a dose band that support the effective therapy by providing sufficient bioavailability. At the same time, the formulation should have non-toxic excipients with a convenient and reliable administration, and robust production process at a minimal cost is very important. That has to be considered or kept in mind when a pediatric formulation is developed. So these are some of the other challenges like physiological changes, what they come across. So the organ weight also differs when the age group progresses. Their body weight varies, their body length varies. So depending on that, even the brain does not have a linear response at all. Maybe heart has linear response to some extent. Sometimes even a negative linear response is seen for as the age progresses. And the serum albumin and the glycoprotein levels also vary. And because of that, the protein binding effect is different in infants and as the age progresses. This is a graph or the study which shows that the enzyme expression and the metabolic rate are different in different age groups, and the activity of human liver microsomal. So we all know that most of the metabolism takes place in the liver microsomal enzymes. So that is also changing with a difference in age. So these are some of the challenges which a pediatric age group faces. And the most positively, the pharmacokinetic parameters has to be considered like absorption, distribution, metabolism, and elimination. The physiological change which is existing in all the age groups that actually affect the pharmacokinetic parameters, and that really has an impact on all these parameters, and that results in poor absorption. There is a disturbance in the distribution of drug. The metabolism gets affected. So here this table shows with example. So I'll just tell you one or two examples, like reduced, because of the reduced gastric pH, there is increased Cmax that is seen, and that has an impact on the one of the parameters. So weakly acidic drugs has poor absorptivity profile. So likewise, there is a size variation in the liver as the age progresses, size variation in the kidney as the age progresses. So the dose cannot be common one for entire pediatric group. That's what we are trying to say here. So there is a difference in gastric intestinal pH, which also affects the absorption of drugs in the pediatric age group. So in mouth and esophagus, stomach, duodenum, there are varying pH. Of course, that is there in the adult, but there is drastic difference between the neonate, infant, child, and adolescents. So this PBPK model, physiological based pharmacokinetic modeling and simulation, it's a computer modeling approach that can incorporate this aspects like blood flow and tissue composition of organs, and it can appropriately define the pharmacokinetics of that particular drug, because it cannot be done on a clinical trial basis. Very tough to perform in a clinical trial basis. So this concept of PBPK was first described by Torrell in 1937. The drug R&D have become more reliant on this modeling and simulation techniques nowadays. And appropriate models can definitely give a framework for forecasting what should be the drug's exposure, the response, the time course for the targeted population, that is pediatric, and with a different dosage regimens. This can also be used to forecast a drug's pharmacokinetics when combined with pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic model, and all the other pharmacological entities can also be discovered to achieve the required in vivo exposure. This is a advantage. There is anything when we talk about, we come across both the advantages and disadvantages. Like any other model, this also has many advantages as well as it is also having certain disadvantages. So this enables simultaneous calculation of maximum plasma concentration and PK profile. This supports in giving a varied simulation, can apply for varied study population, and the simulated concentration can enable for this PKPD simulations with good bioavailability. We can estimate the bioavailability with inter-individual variability as well. But at the same time, there are certain disadvantages, like it is little time consuming, and the mathematical complexities, it involves many mathematical complexities. So the individual who is performing this should have possess a proper skill, and certain basic parameters are required. Only then this can be applied further. So PBPK in pediatrics can be done in three possible ways. One is the drug which is already approved for adult dose can be taken, and that can modeling can be done for a pediatric. Or if the drug candidate is already in phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial, if that is over, then that can also be taken up for this particular modeling. Or if the drug candidate is exclusively used for pediatric, then it can be applied. Almost all the published work so far is adult model. They have adopted like a similar model, like they have taken an adult model, which is first developed using system and drug specific inputs, and then followed the different process evaluation, and then they refined that, and that is then taken up to the children. System specific inputs are modified to the children. So this can be achieved in three different ways. One is called the bottom up method, another is top down method, and another one is the middle out strategy. Of course, for starting this pediatric modeling, there are certain parameters that are required. Without that, we cannot enter or we cannot start this modeling at all. So for that, we require drug physiochemical properties like lipophilicity, molecular size, acid-base status, its pKa, solubility, and there are certain preclinical data which is required, as well as some of the clinical data which is also required. Only then a modeling can be developed. So these are the three different approaches. One is bottom-up approach, where the in vitro potency data is taken and screening system-based information, and then finally it is cross-checked with the human pharmacokinetic parameters. Whereas top-down model is that one which is already established for the adult. So prior knowledge of preclinical and human PK/PD data is taken into consideration, and that is scaling down is done to some extent, and then from that the pediatric modeling and simulation is applied, and from that we can develop a pediatric PBPK model, which is for a particular specific drug without any clinical trials in pediatric group. So sometimes this two can be combined. That is said to be the middle out approach, where top down and bottom down information, both preclinical information as well as the adult PK data are combined, and then they are developed into a model which can give up a specific drug. So here actually drug dependent parameters are required as well as the system dependent parameters. Both are required to develop a PBPK model. So it is all drug dependent parameters like lipophilicity, solubility, pKa values, all those are required, as well as some of the system dependent parameters which are already established in adults can be used to develop a PBPK model, and an exclusive model can be developed, and then that can be reframed so that it gives an optimum PK modeling. So these are some of the tools which are used for developing this models, like MATLAB, SimZip, then GastroPlus, and PKSim is very commonly used by many of the researchers. These are some of the models which are quite often used. And the current application of this modeling system includes it includes a dose estimation, safety and toxicological understanding, and the extension of adult dose to the pediatric dose. Additionally, it also supports what kind of dosage form can be designed in order to achieve the appropriate pharmacokinetic parameters which is required. So this model aids in getting pediatric exclusivity for drug manufacturers that give them additional 6 months of market share also. One of the current application, this is a case study which is taken from this particular journal, BMC Pharmacology and Toxicology, which is recently published in the year 2020. There was a prediction of lisinopril pediatric dose from adult dose using this particular model. So they have developed a modeling for pediatric dose, that too for the drug lisinopril, from the adult dose, using the adult dose as a basic one. So in the recent years, there is a prevalence of primary hypertension in the pediatric population also. There is a need for well-designed and established clinical studies. And so this is a BCS class 3 drug and has a high water solubility and low permeability, and it exhibits poor bioavailability with 6 to 60% intra-individual variability. 6 to 60% is a very large variation that is faced by this particular drug. So they have developed a model which will enable to identify the right dose for the different age groups. So they have developed a series of, after a series of steps, this is the steps what they have adopted, the methodology they have adopted, and after that they have developed a model, and that is being tested, and it is proven that it has a very good effect. Using this is the comparison, like how the dose calculation has been done using the allometric methods like Young's rule, Clark's rule, other weight based, and then BSA based, whereas this is the PKSim dose based, which is having a constant effect. We can see in this table, for example, when we take infants of age group less than 1 year up to 1 year, the dose as per Young's rule, it is 1.53 milligram. Whereas if you use Clark's rule, it is 2.93. Whereas if it is used by this particular method, weight-based method, it is 2.85. but BSA calculation is 4.73. So it's a heavy dose when compared to PK-Sim model. PK-Sim is the simulation modeling that has been adopted, and using that they have calculated a dose from 1 to 2.5. So almost it is double in case of BSA phase. So the kids or the pediatric infant need not have to be given the excess dose. So here that can be overcome. A precise dosing is done here. We can see here everywhere it is 11 milligram, 13 milligram, whereas the PKSM using this modeling, it has not crossed 5 milligrams. Only for adult it is 10 milligrams. So precise dosing can be calculated. That is the case study what we have taken and we have discussed here. Actually, we are in the process of developing, using this model, we are in the process of developing a pediatric dosage form for a particular drug. So in fact, there may be a question in our mind whether regulatory supports for this. Yes, of course, regulatory also has ventured into it. Both US FDA and EMA have become aware of this modeling and simulation interest, and they have developed recent guidelines for this model development. And European Medicine Agency, actually, they conducted a workshop on modeling in pediatric medicines in April 2008 itself. And this has recently been recommended as a framework in order to evaluate the pharmaceuticals by taking into consideration the current clinical scenarios, because it's very tough for taking up the clinical trial, that too for a pediatric group. Even many of the drugs are considered to be orphan drugs when it comes to pregnant ladies. They cannot be tested on pregnant ladies as well. So sponsors who voluntarily complete pediatric clinical studies stated in the written request filed by FDA are offered further 6 months exclusivity. They give marketing exclusivity 6 months by means of Best Pharmaceutical for Children Act. So they have actually planning to strengthen the drug development pipeline for children's drugs by encouraging the pharma industry to adopt this modeling and simulation tools to speed up their clinical studies as well. So even the regulatory is supporting. Hence, instead of normal routine allometric method, this PBPK model can be adopted so that we can overcome many of the unnecessary safety and tolerability issues. Thank you for patient listening. Thank you for the opportunity.